How are you guys? Don't forget to leave a review and enjoy the story. Enjoy watching. The story begins. A young man named Gizkar shouts at Rosemi Darksaint about breaking off their engagement. Behind him hides a dark-haired girl named Sheila, clutching the guy's hand tightly. Rosemi silently stares at Gizkar. Knight's crowd behind her. Gizkar nervously asks why she's staring at him like that. His companion leans closer to him. The aristocrats gathered around whisper among themselves, discussing whether this is really Rosemi herself. The lady is the last surviving representative of the noble Darksaint family. At only 19 years old, she became the strongest commander in the country. Rosemi is also significantly overweight. Behind her back, people call her ugly. A gossiping aristocrat nervously glances at Rosemi's squad. The knights glare at him angrily. Lady Darksaint spits out a mouthful. She barks out, asking if Gizkar really pulled her from the front lines just for such nonsense. Rosemi grimly reminds him that the country is in the midst of a war with the Sandamian Empire. Rosemi angrily asks the hesitant Gizkar how he could have thought of summoning her to the capital at such a moment. Rosemi glances gloomily at the crowd, eagerly watching the scandal. She wonders if Gizkar was trying to disgrace her in front of all of high society. Rosemi was in a hurry to arrive in the capital, thinking it was His Majesty's order, but it turned out to be a mere whim. Rosemi orders her loyal knight to harness the horses. Shrieking, Gizkar decides that the heiress of Darksaint does not want to accept the breakup of the engagement. He shouts that he hates fat women in general. Pressing her lips tightly together, Rosemi silently endures the insults raining down on her. In an even voice, Rosemi remarks that she already understands his feelings toward her perfectly well. A scene from her childhood flashes before Rosemi's eyes, when they laughed and played in a flowering meadow. Nevertheless, she calmly continues. A few years ago, Mrs. Darksaint warned the king that she would accept the breakup of the engagement without complaint. Covered in sweat, Gizkar interjects that his father, the head of state, has been ill for several days. With a cold squint, Rosemi looks at the couple in front of her and notices that Gizkar is behaving like a child trying to hide his mischief from his parents. Lowering her head, Rosemi recalls how Gizkar once stood up for her. She asks Gizkar, who is flushed with excitement, why he now considers her pathetic and unworthy. Gizkar cuts her off sharply, shouting that she has completely lost her conscience. He orders the guards to seize Rosemi. Rosemi raises her head sharply. Boiling with righteous anger, Rosemi reminds them of the king's order to destroy his enemies. Lady Darksaint informs them that if they try to stop her, it will be considered a violation of His Majesty's decree. The guards freeze in place. Finally, they hastily begin to put away their weapons. Turning abruptly, Rosemi calls her subordinates over, telling them to leave immediately. But then Sheila, behind her, notices that it is already too late. Sheila, who had been modestly clinging to the young man, cheerfully announces that by the time General Darksaint arrived in the capital, the plan had already been completed. The prince calls out to her, a tense smile frozen on his face, asking what she is talking about. Behind him, the door swings open abruptly. Panic distorts the face of the man who rushes in. He desperately shouts that a rebellion has broken out. Baron Medias has rebelled and involved the local aristocrats in the uprising. His army numbers 8,000 men. Right now, a detachment of rebels is heading for the capital. The nobles crowded in the hall are terrified. They realize that tomorrow the city will be surrounded. The aristocrats are torn between the desire to flee immediately and the greed that demands they first take all their savings from their homes. But General Darksaint takes control of the situation. Stamping her foot, she orders the crowd to stop panicking immediately. Trembling with fear, the aristocrats obediently freeze in place. Rosemi grimly realizes that this is all the work of Sheila, the daughter of Baron Medias. She laughs, confirming the general's guesses. Sheila Medias admits that she convinced Mr. Gizkar to break off his engagement to the heiress of the Darksaint family. She advised him to summon Rosemi to the capital, gather the aristocrats, and announce it publicly during the ceremony. Then the royal family would no longer be able to interfere. Looking at the gloomy Rosemi, Sheila explains that she did all this to destroy the girl. She adds that the problem is General Darksaint's excessive loyalty. Rosemi simply cannot ignore a possible attack on the capital, even though she knows it is reckless to go against the Baron's army of 8,000 knights. Gizkar cannot believe what he has heard. In despair, he grabs Sheila by the shoulder, asking plaintively if she loves him. She easily convinces him of the sincerity of her feelings. Turning her face away from the prince and sticking out her tongue coquettishly, she remarks that only someone who can convince herself of the reality of love can be a true spy. Tears stream from the eyes of the shocked Gizkar. Falling to his knees, he cries, while Sheila indifferently walks away from him. Gloomily watching the scene unfolding before her, Rosemi wonders what to do. It is clear that the Baron's daughter simply used Gizkar. Due to the confrontation with the Empire, General Darksaint cannot summon his 20,000-strong army. There is no hope for reinforcements. The plan is indeed wonderful, but Rosemi finds a flaw in it. Smiling, she informs Sheila of this. She looks at the general with disbelief. Pounding her chest, Mrs. Darksaint says that the Baron didn't think about how Rosemi and her 10 loyal soldiers could destroy an 8,000-strong army. Sheila argues, exclaiming that this is nonsense and simply impossible. Looking seriously into the spy's eyes, Mrs. Darksaint asks if she really thinks so. The confidence drains from Sheila's face. Rosemi thinks to herself that she can probably do it. After all, she is a heroine known for her bravery. That means she could defeat 8,000 enemies with only 10 warriors. General Darksaint remarks aloud that she has one question. She asks why the Baron's daughter revealed her identity. Putting her hand to her chest, she explains that this is her only chance to preserve her name in history forever. With a dreamy smile, Sheila imagines aloud how people will talk about her in the future. She will be remembered as a villain who rose from nothing and managed to manipulate the entire state, leading it to its demise. Sheila's gaze becomes misty, and she remarks that it will be delightful. Rosemi laughs heartily. She says that Sheila is very sweet, even though she was Giskar's mistress. Mrs. Darksaint adds that she liked Sheila and, as a sign of sympathy, she will personally deal with the spy. She thanks Rosemi, but then Gizkar rushes between them like a bullet. Shielding Sheila with his body, he stammers that the general is simply jealous of the Baron's daughter's beauty. An enraged Rosemi calls the prince a fool. Sheila covers Giskar's mouth and puts a knife to his throat. Under his stunned gaze, the spy says that praise from Lady Darksaint herself is the greatest honor for Sheila. With these words, the Baron's daughter throws a smoke bomb. The general can't see anything. The smoke clears, but only Gizkar remains in the middle of the hall, his back hunched in despair. Rosemi realizes that Sheila has escaped, but that doesn't bother the general much right now. She shouts at her knights to listen to her carefully. They readily obey her order. Lady Darksaint announces that the enemy is relying on its numerical superiority, which has weakened its vigilance. The two armies clash on the plain. Rosemi and her soldiers need to break through to the center and attack the commander. She brings her warriors to combat readiness. The heiress of the Darksaint family promises to kiss passionately whoever brings her the head of the enemy general. Her knights reply that they will have to fight each other for this reward. Rosemi bursts out laughing. She calls her subordinates rude. She announces that as punishment, the survivors will serve at her bedside. The knights burst out laughing. A warm smile appears on Rosemi's face. General Darksaint is about to mount her horse when Gizkar approaches her. The girl greets the prince. He lowers his head. Without looking at Rosemi, he admits that he envied her famous name and glory. He only wanted to get rid of the taunts and ridicule of the nobles, who did not take the prince seriously, hiding behind Lady Darksaint. Gizkar was going to use Baron Medias to ensure the security of his territories, but everything turned against him. Rosemi grimly remarks that she will most likely die. He asks again, alarmed. General Darksaint informs him that the battle is doomed to failure from the outset, so she should not tell her soldiers. With a sad smile on her lips, Rosemi admits that she loved the prince. Gizkar looks at her in confusion. General Darksaint jumps onto her horse. She says that even now, she cannot blame the prince. The girl adds that if she were a man, she herself would not want someone as ugly as her. Turning to Gizkar, Rosemi smiles and says goodbye to him, then sets off. The prince runs down the steps, desperately calling after her, but Lady Darksaint can no longer hear him. A messenger rushes up to Baron Medias. He asks what has happened. The messenger reports that he has received a message from a spy in the capital. The Baron frowns, but the messenger continues. He announces that it is from the far edge of the realm. General Darksaint is approaching them with 10 soldiers. Medias cannot believe that Rosemi is planning a frontal attack. He laughs, thinking it is incredibly foolish of her. He informs the army that there are only 10 enemies. The Baron orders them to wipe them out completely, since their numerical superiority allows it. Rosemi leads her squad against the enemies. The soldiers and the general literally cut their way through the enemy army. Finally, Lady Darksaint's eyes flash predatorily. She finds Baron Medias and rushes to attack him. He only has time to see Rosemi, and then she delivers a crushing blow. General Darksaint cuts off the Baron's head, and his soldiers retreat. Rosemi wins a crushing victory, but she herself notices the danger too late. Only 2 soldiers from General Darksaint's squad remain alive. They search the entire battlefield, but cannot find the body of their commander. 1 year later, The country that lost Rosemi was eventually absorbed by the Sandemian Empire. As a child, Rosemi was pretty, not ugly at all. Her parents often told her that when she grew up, she would become truly beautiful. But her happiness came to an end. Rosemi's father and brother died during the Sandemian Empire's attack. After that, her mother, unable to bear such grief, died of sorrow. The unfortunate girl was taken in by her grandfather. When Rosemi was little, she wasn't very good at sports. Instead, she preferred to spend her time in the home library, where she devoured books on tactics and strategy. The girl carefully thought over what she had read and endlessly asked her grandfather, a retired general, about the affairs of the country. This is how Rosemi realized the dire situation of her homeland. At that time, she was already betrothed to Prince Giskar. She recounted everything she learned to him, sincerely concerned about the fate of the country. But the boy did not take her words seriously, thinking that she was worrying too much. The only thing left for Rosemi to do was to pray incessantly to God, the patron saint of her family. Kneeling, the girl addressed the protector of her family. She said she didn't care about her future, but she was very afraid that her beloved Giskar might not survive the war. Rosemi asked God to protect their country. At that moment, the protector of their clan appeared before the girl. Rosemi stared in awe at his majestic figure. His voice resonated in her heart. God said he could show her only one way. He promised to give her his blessing. However, this would cause Rosemi discomfort, change her body, and not relieve the girl of her difficulties. The blessing would allow her to get more out of her training, but she would have to pay for this power. God asked Rosemi if she could give something in return. The girl said fervently that he could take anything he wanted if it meant that her country and her beloved Giskar would live in peace. After a pause, God announced that Rosemi would lose her beauty. The girl stared at him in shock. The protector of the Dark Saint clan continued. He explained that the blessing would allow Rosemi to gain incredible strength and the soul of a hero, but she would lose her beauty. And in the end, the prince would fall out of love with her. Bursting into tears, the girl agreed, despite the high price. God gave her one last warning. He said that the fall of the country resembled an unstoppable current that no single warrior could stop. But Rosemi, sobbing, remained true to her decision. God hoped that one day the girl would find happiness. Covered in blood, Lady Darksaint struggled to regain consciousness. Opening her eyes, she realizes she doesn't know where she is. Rosemi remembers how, in a moment of jubilation, she was thrown back by a spear and lost consciousness. The general notices the body of his faithful horse next to him. Tears well up in her eyes, and she covers the animal's eyes, thanking her friend one last time. Rosemi gets to her feet and leaves her temporary shelter. With a faint smile, Lady Darksaint realizes that she is incredibly lucky to be alive again. But then she is seized by a painful cough. Rosemi spits a clot of blood into her palm. The girl bitterly realizes that she doesn't have long left. Memories flash before her eyes. Exhausting training sessions, combat training, lunches and breakfasts. The gossip behind her back, her bravery, and her bitter sobs in front of the mirror. Tears roll down Rosemi's cheeks. She remembers how Giskar insulted her. The girl decides she has had enough. Lady Darksaint seems to see her family in front of her. She calls out to them, promising that she will come to them soon. But then Rosemi hears a familiar voice calling her. She opens her eyes, and she sees God before her. He notices that the girl did not give up until the very end. She replies that she tried her best and timidly asks if she really did well. The god tells her that her strength changed the entire course of history, which is a rare achievement even among his followers. He asks if that is all for her. She smiles bitterly and says that if Giskar will live happily, she asks to be taken to God. After a pause, the defender of the Dark Saint clan announces that he will take away his blessing from the girl. Then she will serve the god of power and become his priestess. Rosemi reminds him that she is bleeding to death. The god replies that this is nothing to worry about. Her body will burn all the accumulated fat, transform it into magical power, and activate it as regenerative cells. But Ms. Darksaint refuses. She admits that she has already exhausted her resolve and killed many soldiers of the Empire. Rosemi is convinced that if she continues to exist, she will only cause harm. However, God wants Ms. Darksaint to live on, no matter what. She has suffered so much, put so much effort into her cause, and the protector of her family simply cannot accept that Rosemi will die without ever finding happiness. He adds that he wants her to be rewarded for all the torment she has endured. The girl smiles weakly in response. God extends his hand, and a sphere glitters above it. He announces that he will perform a miracle for the greatest heroine among his apostles. Rosemi thinks this is very selfish, but it seems that her life, consisting of nothing but battles, is coming to an end. The way Gizkar rejected her will one day become just a memory. The defender of the Dark Saint clan announces that he can control health, for he is the god responsible for physical strength and the body. Pointing upward, he says that there is something Rosemi does not even suspect. The girl replies that she cannot even imagine what he is talking about. The god reveals he will give the last thing under his control to Lady Dark Saint. Her body gradually shrinks. Her hair becomes longer and thicker. Rosemi is bathed in bright light. The patron saint of the family bestows upon the girl the blessing of beauty. Sunbeams play on Rosemi's face. She slowly opens her eyes. Standing up, Rosemi looks around in confusion at the place where she woke up. Rosemi realizes that she is not on the battlefield, but on some kind of plane. She is amazed to notice how clear and resonant her voice is now, and even touches her neck incredulously to make sure. Lady Dark Saint feels how unusually light her body has become. She looks at herself and sees that she is not wearing any clothes. Turning around, Rosemi finds the discarded cloak behind her. Rosemi puts it on and is quite pleased with the result. She wonders if this is the blessing of beauty that the god spoke of. Rosemi feels as if she has shed the heavy burden of excess weight and now feels light as air. Even her soul feels light and calm. It seems as if, along with the extra pounds, the responsibility for the country that had previously weighed on General Dark Saint's shoulders has also disappeared. Rosemi wonders what she should do now. Rosemi no longer has a reason to fight. The commanders of the Sindamian Empire are very talented and skilled. Now that Baron Media's rebellion has been suppressed, they are unlikely to attack openly. Lady Dark Saint's army numbers 20,000 soldiers. Of course, it is unlikely that they will be able to win with such numbers, but they can fight without suffering losses. And in the future, it is quite possible to surrender on favorable terms. Rosemi is relieved to realize that Gizkar's life is not in danger yet. She sees his twisted face again and hears all the insults he hurled at her. Now, when Rosemi thinks about it, she realizes how foolish he was. Tears roll down Mrs. Dark Saint's face. The girl's stomach growls loudly. It makes her laugh. Rosemi is going hunting, but it's one thing to say it and another to do it. Ms. Dark Saint has no weapons with her, and it would be nice to have a boo. She decides to make a spear out of a branch. Someone's eyes sparkle from the bushes. As soon as the girl notices them, their owner, a wild boar, jumps out at her. Rosemi realizes that the beast is enraged. She is not at all sure that she will be able to deal with it now. But Mrs. Dark Saint has no choice. She clenches her fists, and she strikes the animal decisively. To her surprise, the boar falls dead. Rosemi presses her hand to her chest, shocked by her own strength. The girl used to have the ideal weight for fighting, but now she has lost weight and must have lost all her skills. Rosemi decides to think about that later. Now she has game, and the girl will be able to eat. She plans to eat as much meat as possible. She will use the skin as outer clothing, and she will make a spear out of the fangs and a branch. Having accomplished everything she had planned, Rosemi is in a good mood. Rosemi notices that dusk is already falling. She leaves her camp and sets off on her journey. Lady Dark Saint wonders if there is a village nearby, or at least a suitable shelter in case of wind and snow. Then Rosemi notices several people ahead of her performing some kind of religious service. Looking closer, the girl sees a palanquin. She wonders if some kind of nobility is passing by. Lady Dark Saint also notices a large number of treats. However, the atmosphere is not at all reminiscent of a feast. The people seem tense. The priest announces that the ceremony has come to an end. With a smile, he orders everyone to descend the mountain and leave everything else to the goddess. Rosemi squints and looks closely at the priest's clothes. It is black, which means it is mourning attire. The priest also read a memorial prayer for those who met an unfortunate death. A faint female moan comes from the carriage. Rosemi realizes that she has witnessed a preliminary memorial ceremony, a ritual to comfort the soul of a girl who is about to die. With disgust, Mrs. Dark Saint realizes that the people are about to perform a sacrifice. Outraged by this barbarism, Rosemi hurriedly leaves her refuge. Inside the palanquin, the silhouette of a girl can be seen. She is terribly afraid, but she can only moan weakly through the cloth covering her mouth. The girl bursts into bitter tears. She does not want to die at all. She does not understand why they are doing this to her. Cydia, as the girl is called, was born with an appearance unusual for a mountain village. She has snow-white hair and skin, and eyes as red as blood. In short, Cydia is an albino. However, this did not cause her any problems, except for increased sensitivity to sunlight. The girl was blessed by the goddess, who endowed Cydia with outstanding magical abilities. This is how she benefited the village, and therefore people did not fear her. Cydia lived comfortably. until a wild dragon appeared in their settlement. Such creatures are at the top of the ecosystem. Dragons are highly intelligent, and their powerful magic can even change the landscape. These creatures are descendants of the dragons described in ancient myths and legends. First, the serpent killed the village's best hunter. Then it killed the villagers who tried to warn the settlement. They spread terror among the people. The dragon announced that it wanted to kill the white girl. After these words, the villagers, who had always been so kind, suddenly changed their attitude toward Cydia. Apologizing, they grabbed the girl and covered her mouth so she couldn't use her magic. Then Cydia was locked in a palanquin. The girl feels that there is something strange about this whole story. Of course, there are a number of known cases where dragons destroyed entire villages. But this situation resembles an accidental disaster. It seems that the unfortunate village simply happened to be in the creature's path. Everything that happened seems to be steeped in dirty human intent. Moreover, the dragon even spoke. Why would such a powerful mythical creature attack a remote settlement lost in the depths of the mountains? Cydia, bursting into tears, realizes that this is too minor a crime for a dragon. She guesses that there is a human trace in this matter. The girl thinks plaintively about why she should fall victim to some conspiracy. Suddenly, she raises her head sharply. Cydia hears the crunch of branches and realizes that someone is approaching. She remembers how a wandering singer who sometimes visited her village told stories in which a brave hero always rescued a princess from captivity. Trying to attract the stranger's attention, Cydia makes as much noise as she can. She mentally urges her savior on. A sudden bright light blinds the girl. When she can see again, her eyes widen in amazement. Before her stands Lady Darksaint. Cydia feels as if a golden glow is pouring over her. She is stunned by the beauty of her savior. Rosemary has an elegant figure, slender but muscular arms, and shiny long hair that looks as if it is illuminated by the moon. Cydia thinks that the stranger may also be a victim, but then dismisses the idea, deciding that her savior is more suited to the role of a princess. However, Rosemary resembles Savage. Rosemary takes out a sharp knife, and Cydia closes her eyes in fear. But Rosemary only cuts the ropes. Cydia stammers her thanks to her savior. Rosemary asks what year it is, what this place is, who Cydia is, and why someone tried to kill her. The rescued girl looks at the stranger in amazement. She decides that she does not look like a helpless victim of a dragon, because she has such a determined voice. Cydia realizes that such beauty could destroy the country. But Rosemary will not seduce and manipulate the king. She will take up the sword herself and lead the troops. Rosemary is one of those who will defeat the kingdom by attacking it directly. Lowering her gaze, Rosemary reflects that death is just a matter of timing. For 10 years, General Darksaint fought tirelessly and took part in battles. That's when she decided that if she was going to die, she would die with dignity. The moment when Rosemary, leading 10 soldiers, rushed to attack an army of 8,000 enemies, was the most appropriate time to meet her end. However, Lady Darksaint was brought back to life. Of course, Rosemary considers the blessing of the god of strength to be the greatest honor for herself. But still, the girl felt heavy at heart, because the perfect moment for a dignified death had been missed. Rosemary mentally addresses the god. Now she understands what his intentions were. Lady Darksaint was not destined to perish on the battlefield. Instead, Rosemary must save the life of a tribal girl. Only then will she be able to meet death with greater meaning. God, however, had other plans. Cydia gazes admiringly at her savior. Awaking from her admiration, the albino girl hastily launches into an explanation. They are now at the foot of the Dragonbone Mountains, just above the village of Baddies. Rosemary notes that this is quite far from the site of the last battle. Cydia explains sheepishly that she doesn't know what year it is, because her settlement doesn't use the calendar. This surprises Ms. Darksaint. With a trembling voice, Cydia introduces herself. Rosemary smiles and gives her name in response. To herself, the albino girl thinks that her savior has a very beautiful name. Hesitating, Cydia says that she was sacrificed to the dragon. This interests Ms. Darksaint. She believes that this creature will be a worthy opponent for her last battle in life. Cydia listens to her words with concern. Then she asks why Rosemary ended up in the village. Smiling proudly, Lady Darksaint explains that God has commanded her to fight and die. Her answer amazes Cydia. Rosemary pats the girl encouragingly on the head and cheerfully adds that it would be better if they ate her. Or else, she will defeat the Lord of the Mountains himself. Tears well up in Cydia's eyes. She cannot believe that Lady Darksaint, having seen her for the first time and barely getting to know her, already ready to give her life for the girl. Rosemary reassures Cydia, saying that she has nothing to worry about because she is already saved. But Cydia, bursting into tears, replies that Lady Dark Saint will die. She calmly says that she was going to leave this life anyway. She will not regret ceasing to exist. Rosemi turns to leave. Cydia bows her head to her savior, thanking her. Crying, she rushes off in the other direction. Cydia decides that now that she is saved, the most important thing for her is to run as far away from this place as possible. No sooner has she thought this than Cydia slows down and finally stops. She has no idea where to go now. The people of her home village turned against her, sacrificing her to the dragon. If she returns to her settlement, she will never be accepted. Most likely, they will only try to sacrifice her again. Cydia remembers the brave Rosemi walking to her certain death. Cydia turns around. She thinks about how Lady Dark Saint will sacrifice herself for her. Rosemi will act like a true heroine. She is as beautiful as the sun, lighting up the stars around her and radiating golden light. Cydia cannot get her out of her head. Having made her decision, Cydia runs to catch up with Lady Dark Saint. She wants to continue watching the embodiment of beauty named Rosemi. A group of villagers approaches the palanquin. One of the men apologizes mockingly to their captive. His one-eyed companion orders them to hurry up and pull the girl out. He notices a predatory gleam in the eyes of the first speaker and asks what he intends to do. The man adds that getting his hands dirty is not part of the job. The other man replies with a dirty laugh that he'll just try. He pulls back the curtain of the palanquin, saying that he has never seen an albino before. He can't wait to see what color her skin is. But what meets the man's gaze is Rosemi with a stern expression on her face. Mrs. Dark Saint stares intently at the stranger. Overcoming his astonishment, he finds the girl incredibly attractive. The man breaks into a smile. Turning to his companions, he shouts that there's a real beauty inside. His words are cut short by a blow to the throat. Shocked, the man looks down and sees his own blood pouring from a wound. He can only gasp, choking. His eyes roll back, and the silhouettes of his companions blur and darken. The villagers are shocked by what has happened and cannot even move. Rosemi, clutching her weapon tightly in her hand, slowly steps out of the palanquin. Her gaze is determined as she looks over the squad standing before her. The one-eyed man does not understand who she is. The girl has mercilessly killed his friend, but he himself cannot stop admiring her stunning appearance. Lady Dark Saint breaks the silence. She shouts out her disappointment. It would be easy for her to deal with a group of villagers, but that's not what the girl was waiting for. Her words send the men into a state of complete shock. Rosemi irritably announces that she was going to find a worthy end for herself by fighting the greatest battle with a dragon in her life. She adds gloomily that she was looking forward to it. But suddenly, she has a revelation. Lady Dark Saint remembers hearing that powerful dragons are capable of taking human form. Rosemi decides that one of the villagers is the mythical creature. The main character runs up to a group of people and pulls a frightened man out of the crowd. She shakes him, demanding that he admit that he is a dragon. He cannot understand what Rosemi wants from him. Lady Dark Saint shouts, right in his face, waiting for him to transform. Realizing that she will get nothing from the man, the girl lets him go. Rosemi looks at the others, clutching her spear tightly, and tries to figure out which of them is the dragon. The men look at her silently, not knowing what to do. The main character drops her hands in anger. She orders the villagers to stop pretending and finally accept their true form. They recoil in fear from the angry Lady Dark Saint. Rosemi rages, demanding that they immediately gather themselves and awaken the blood sealed within them. She clenches her fists and wants to know immediately who will be her last opponent. The main character lets out a vicious scream, wishing that someone would turn into a dragon already. The villagers cower in fear and respond plaintively that they do not know how. Staring intently at the raging girl, the one-eyed man recalls that the entire squad was convinced that the task was not worth the effort. The Lord had ordered them to simply get rid of the albino orphan. What could be easier, it would seem. But now, watching the stranger threaten one of his companions with a spear, waiting for him to transform into a dragon, the one-eyed man no longer considers it an easy task. And all because of this unknown beauty. She finally got tired of dealing with the villagers and ordered them in a sharp voice to take their comrade and get out of sight. The men exchanged nervous glances, but then one brave soul steps out of the crowd. He hurriedly orders everyone to stop and calm down. Then the man turns to Rosemi, calling her beauty. Hearing this, his panicked companions nervously try to stop their leader. He, however, continues. He asks what happened to the girl who was in the palanquin. Mrs. Dark Saint coolly replies that she let the captive escape. The man smiles tensely and remarks that this is very bad. He decides that all is not lost, because the girl could hardly have gone far, which means it will not be difficult to catch up with her. But then Cydia runs out onto the clearing, crying and calling for her savior. Turning around, Rosemary says sharply that she ordered the girl to return home. But Cydia replies that many villagers were ready to sacrifice her. Continuing to cry, the girl adds that she is scared. After thinking hard, Rosemary realizes that Cydia is right. The squad leader watches in confusion as Mrs. Darksaint apologizes to the girl for her carelessness. Cydia plucks up her courage and says she has a request for Rosemary. Bowing her head, the girl begs her savior to let her accompany Mrs. Darksaint. She looks at the crying Cydia. She hears that the girl, despite her tears, is full of sincere determination. Rosemary remembers how her soldiers swore allegiance to her. Softening, the main character smiles and asks Cydia to look at her. The girl instantly raises her head. Mrs. Darksaint seriously informs her that her life is full of dangers and she will not be able to rescue Cydia from trouble forever. Rosemary asks if the girl is sure she is ready for this. With a voice trembling with excitement, she eagerly agrees. Lady Darksaint looks at Cydia approvingly. She pats the girl on the head and promises to protect her companion at any cost. The leader of the squad interrupts their conversation, deciding to remind them of his existence. He asks them to stop ignoring him. Rosemary rewards him with an icy stare. This makes the man nervous. He admits that they are indeed weak, especially when compared to a dragon. The leader continues, ignoring the grim expression on Ms. Darksaint's face. He says that they don't care about Rosemary, nor are they interested in alcohol or money. Their only goal is the albino girl. They will take Cydia and then calmly part ways with the main character. The man nervously remarks that Rosemary looks like she's about to kill him on the spot. She is stunningly beautiful, but it is clearly best to stay away from her. With a forced smile on his face, the leader suggests resolving everything peacefully. Interrupting him, Ms. Darksaint refuses. The man desperately asks why she has made this decision. Rosemary explains that she has already guaranteed Cydia's safety. The leader cannot believe that the reason is just some stupid promise. He wonders if it is really just because of a few words. Rosemary will fight 10 men. After a pause, Ms. Darksaint says she was a commander. She always told her subordinates that people in power should not break their vows. If you fail to keep your promise even once, your word will lose its power. Seizing the weapon, Rosemary adds that the leader has miscalculated. In a gloomy voice, Rosemary remarks that there are 9 enemies left. He does not understand what the main character means. Rosemary, without deigning to answer him, walks past and pierces his neck with a single blow. The man, covered in blood, does not even have time to notice the moment of attack. He only knows that his throat has been cut. Staggering, the leader falls to the ground. With a faint smile on his face, he notes that his killer, with someone else's blood on her cheek, looks incredibly cool, as if she stepped out of a picture. With this thought, the man's eyes close forever. The villagers call out to their leader in horror, but he can no longer hear them. Rosemary walks past them, looking at her hand. Now, she finally begins to realize the power hidden within her. Although the main character has lost weight, her muscle strength has remained. Now Rosemary has gained speed that she never dreamed of before. Lady Darksaint seems to have transformed from a heavy caterpillar into a light butterfly. The one-eyed man, frightened by what has happened, orders the wolf dragon to be summoned. His companion is not sure that this is a good idea, because he feels sorry for feeding such a beauty to the creature. The first speaker asks whose side he is on. He obediently blows the whistle. A scream pierces the previously quiet plain. Cydia covers her ears, while Rosemary cannot understand what the sound is. Something is rushing toward the gathered crowd. A moment later, a dragon bursts into the clearing, roaring deafeningly. Lady Darksaint stares at the creature in shock. Behind her, Cydia gestures desperately, explaining that this is the dragon that attacked her village. Rosemary looks closely at the animal. It is a wolf with dragon blood, which is probably why it has such a large body. Something puzzles the main character. As far as she knows, dragon wolves are highly intelligent. These creatures have a difficult temperament and are reluctant to obey human commands. It must be very difficult to tame such huge animals. Lady Darksaint takes another careful look at the growling dragon. Now she understands the reason for the creature's behavior. Illegal drugs and magic are being used on it. Rosemary guesses that the dragon wolf is being forced by force. A sudden sensation distracts the girl from her thoughts. She feels the protection of her body's beauty pulsing. Rosemary remembers that the most powerful god is also responsible for health. The main character decides that this situation cannot be ignored. Under the astonished gaze of the frightened Cydia, Rosemary tells the dragon wolf that the god has commanded her to lend a helping hand to the creature. She orders it to submit to her, and then she will become the animal's mistress. The creature growls, Something catches Ms. Darksaint's attention. She realizes that, judging by the shape of its horns, she is looking at a female dragon. Rosemi decides to name it Sheila. Boiling with rage, Lady Darksaint informs the animal that she named it after a girl she deeply respects. She adds that this was the name of a promiscuous woman. Cydia, the villagers, and the dragon herself keep their eyes on the raging Rosemi. The animal roars, preparing to attack Mrs. Darksaint. She soars into the air and swings her fist. Rosemi furiously asks how Sheila dared to take Gizkar away from her. Showering her with insults, Lady Darksaint strikes the dragon wolf with her bare hands. This causes the animal to exhale in amazement. The villagers watch the battle in shock. The one-eyed man admires the girl who has climbed into a fight with a dragon with her fists. Cydia, cowering, watches Rosemi, who is literally radiating anger. She wonders how badly a girl named Sheila has offended the main character. Mrs. Darksaint smiles smugly and asks how the Baron Media's daughter's namesake liked the attack. The dragoness rises to her feet, bears a row of sharp teeth, and growls. Rosemi notes the animal's combative mood. Cydia realizes that the main character will take out all her anger intended for Sheila on the dragon wolf. Rosemi rains blows down on the dragon wolf. The animal is confused, watching her opponent. What was happening now did not fit with the experience the dragon had accumulated. She knew that humans were treacherous creatures, worthy only of hatred. No human had ever tried to fight an animal face to face. But this girl was not like the others. The wolf dragon sighed heavily. Rosemi's voice distracts the astonished creature from her thoughts. She announces that Sheila has finally managed to get rid of the poison that is eating away at her body. Cracking her knuckles, Lady Darksaint suggests that they beat each other up properly. The dragoness thanks her rival and threatens to kill her. Rosemi tells her not to drag it out and to attack already. The opponents clash in battle. 3 hours pass. The villagers, who are unwilling witnesses to the fight, are already speechless. Rosemi laughs smugly. She tells the dragoness that she has proven herself to be incredibly resilient, adding that this is what one would expect from someone named Sheila. The animal lies behind the girl, listening intently, and growls in agreement. The one-eyed man is shocked to realize that Rosemi has managed to tame the dragon wolf. Here, Lady Darksaint is distracted from her new ally and remembers the squad. She turns to them and asks what they're going to do. The villagers are frightened by Rosemi's sudden attention. She continues, asking if the men are going to fight. Lady Darksaint strokes Cydia's head and adds that if the villagers are not going to fight, they must lay down their weapons. They instantly fall to their knees. Rosemi stares at them with an icy gaze and wants to know who the leader of the group is. The one-eyed man replies that they are led by the lord of these lands, Baron Bergiandel. This name means nothing to Lady Darksaint, although the girl is well aware of the main nobles of neighboring states. Most likely, the leader of this gang of scoundrels is some small fry. Glaring sternly at the one-eyed man from her height, Rosemi asks what the purpose of the village residence squad is. She flashes her eyes menacingly and orders him to tell her everything he knows. Nervously giggling, he explains that an albino girl is incredibly rare, so this whole sacrifice was devised with the aim of selling Cydia into slavery. As far as the one-eyed man knows, a fabulous sum of money was offered for the girl. Rosemi replies that this is what she thought. The man scratches the back of his head awkwardly and adds that there is something else. There are some fairly reliable rumors coming from the chief. Lady Darksaint asks if he's talking about the priest. He confirms her guess, admitting that he organized it all. Rumor has it that the clergyman is the Baron's eldest son. Rosemi remembers the smiling man who read the memorial prayer. Cydia cannot believe that he is responsible for her abduction. Mrs. Darksaint, folding her arms across her chest, notes that the eldest son usually inherits his family's estate and rarely chooses a different path. She wonders if he is really such a devout believer. But the one-eyed man replies that this is not the case. In fact, the priest simply enjoys being pitted or considered unfortunate. Rosemi and Cydia look at the speaker with disgust, but he continues. It all started when the clergyman lost all his servants in a mountain collapse. Then his beloved younger sister died of an illness. After such heavy losses, those around him directed all their sympathy toward the priest. He liked this very much. Rosemi interjects that this is disgusting. The priest's habit only got worse. He killed his mother with his own hands. Cydia does not understand how this is possible and even asks the narrator again. He confirms that this is how it happened. Mrs. Darksaint asks the girl not to try to understand this action. After all, it was all because of the priest's corrupt blood. The one-eyed man continues his story. The murder was solved. The Baron realized that such a son could not become his heir and sent him to a monastery. He believed that his offspring would thus cure his perverted nature. Rosemi asks if it really helped. The narrator replies that quite the opposite was true. The priest began working in orphanages. For several years, he carefully cultivated an image of a kind and caring abbot. But one day, his favorite pupil died in an accident, as it was said, although in reality the priest himself had strangled the child. And again, everyone pitied the grief-stricken abbot because he loved his pupil so much. Cydia realizes with horror that the priest had always been kind to her too. He always played with her and cared for her, and it was hard for her to imagine that it was all a lie. Gritting her teeth, Rosemi orders Cydia to return to the village. She cracks her knuckles and adds that if the story is true, the girl will be left alone. Narrowing her eyes angrily, Mrs. Darksaint promises to personally send the priest to hell. Cydia eagerly agrees. Rosemi orders Sheila to follow her. Suddenly, the one-eyed man asks the main character to wait. He and his companions ask to be taken with her. She asks again in confusion. The villagers eagerly swear their loyalty and readiness to give their lives for the golden-haired beauty. They add that they're not impressed by her bravery, but are simply in love with Rosemi. Mrs. Darksaint thinks they're not so bad after all. After a moment of silence, she asks Cydia what they should do. The main character reminds her that the group was going to sacrifice the girl. However, Cydia still suggests taking the men with them. Rosemi listens to the girl's words. She runs up to the villagers and excitedly says that she shares their feelings. She asks if they have fallen in love not only with Lady Darksaint's beauty, but also with her strength. The one-eyed man responds passionately that this is indeed the case. Rosemi impressed him by fighting the dragon and even taming it. Cydia admits that she was struck by Rosemi's beautiful appearance and strength at first sight. She adds that she feels like a heroine from a legend when she is near Lady Darksaint. The villagers eagerly agree, and even Sheila growls in confirmation of the girl's words. Embarrassed, Rosemi asks them not to praise her too much. Cydia continues, admitting that she believes she too can become someone incredible if she stays with Lady Darksaint. The one-eyed man, striking his chest, says he feels the same way. He says that even though he is a scoundrel, he also hopes to become someone to be proud of. His companions say they are burning with enthusiasm. They join Cydia in expressing their willingness to follow Rosemi. After a pause, Ms. Darksaint asks them not to make Cydia cry. She adds that this is her only condition and thinks her followers are a bit strange. The one-eyed man washes his pants in the stream. He finds it a terrible shame for his first assignment as Rosemi's subordinate. His companions are busy doing the same thing. The power of Mistress Darksaint so impressed the villagers that their bladders couldn't hold it in. As soon as the main character discovered this, she asked irritably what was going on. The embarrassed squad immediately rushed to correct their mistake. Distracted from his fascinating task, the one-eyed man raises his head and notices Rosemi. She is staring spellbound at her reflection. Mrs. Darksaint, reborn, tried not to pay attention, but now she cannot believe that this face is hers. However, it had always belonged to her. It even bore the features of her mother. Rosemi imagines her relationship with Gizkar if she had had this appearance back then, but she immediately gives up on her dreams. Rosemi decides that she will only think about it if the prince begs her for forgiveness on his knees. Then the main character notices that her subordinates have stopped washing. She asks what is going on. They look at her sheepishly, covering themselves with their pants. Rosemi says irritably that if they want to serve her, they must prove their usefulness. The one-eyed man hesitates and explains that they simply do not want to expose such an unsightly picture to Mrs. Darksaint. Looking at him, Rosemi asks if he is embarrassed, assessing what is hidden under her clothes. The main character assesses the sight as not bad. The whole squad blushes. They feel that this is already bordering on harassment. Sheila walks sedately across the plain. The monsters glance at her, but do not dare to attack. A single glance from the dragoness stops them. Rosemi, riding on Sheila, notes that this is to be expected from such a powerful creature. After a pause, Mrs. Darksaint timidly asks Cydia, who is sitting in front of her, if she is beautiful. The girl, gesturing wildly, hastens to convince Rosemi of this. She says she has never met anyone so beautiful. A one-eyed man interrupts their conversation, assuring them that neither he nor his companions have ever met anyone with such unearthly beauty. Mrs. Darksaint thoughtfully wonders if a war could break out because of her. Her companions are stunned into silence. Embarrassed, Rosemi remarks that it would be too presumptuous to think so. But Cydia, after some hesitation, decides that some king could certainly send an entire army to conquer Lady Darksaint. The one-eyed man and the other members of the squad agree with the albino girl, confirming that the main character could be the cause of a battle. Rosemi frowns, realizing that such beauty could easily turn into a curse. Nowadays, the strong exploit the weak without remorse. If the main character were only a beautiful shell, her will and dignity would be disregarded. But, unfortunately for such people, Lady Darksaint will not allow herself to be offended. If any ruler tries to take her by force, Rosemary will fearlessly meet him face to face and crush his troops to smithereens. Clenching her fists, she recalls the insults about her appearance that she was showered with in the past. Lady Darksaint admits aloud that she is beautiful. The main character's companions watch her in bewilderment. Cydia asks if the girl even liked fighting. She replies that she fought for her loved ones and her homeland and didn't even think about whether she liked it or not. If they could just hide, disappear from the eyes of the powerful, then it would be possible to survive without fighting. However, such a lifestyle is only suitable for rats. Rosemary passionately asks what is the point of living in fear. She always chooses the path of destroying her enemies, and now she cannot change. Her subordinates stare wide-eyed, impressed by the main character's fiery speech. She continues. She says that in order to protect herself from those who are trying to deprive her of her freedom and dignity, she will have to declare herself to the whole world, no matter what. First of all, Ms. Darksaint decides to conquer this country so that everyone will know about it and talk about it everywhere. Looking at her companions, she asks why they are all shaking. She laughs nervously. The one-eyed man replies that it is the combat tremor of a true soldier and that it is simply impossible to resist. He adds that Rosemary is the best. Cydia feels like she has witnessed the birth of a legend. Smiling, Mrs. Darksaint remarks that she misses the days when she wasn't called the ugly general. Back then, her unattractiveness set her apart. But now that Rosemary has returned to her beautiful form, she realizes that possessing beauty capable of destroying a state is much more difficult. Looking down from the cliff in front of her, Mrs. Darksaint understands how difficult a woman's fate is. Behind the main character, her companions crowd around, burning with enthusiasm and admiration. Cydia smiles broadly and points out the settlement that has opened up before them to the main character. Lady Darksaint looks at the village appraisingly. She understands that even a tame dragoness can scare the unprepared inhabitants of the settlement to death. Rosemary sends Sheila off for a walk, and she growls understandingly. The main character chooses 3 men from the group and orders them to go with her. Having finished the preparatory work, Rosemary asks Cydia to lead them. The grieving villagers are sitting in the mayor's house. They plaintively beg Cydia for forgiveness. The headman himself is also quite upset. He complains about the injustice of the world, not understanding why an innocent girl had to be sacrificed. Everyone in the village is convinced that Cydia is already dead and mourns her passing. However, the village headman does not think so. He believes that the albino girl is now being taken away to serve as a slave to the aristocrats. The villagers raised and looked after Cydia, try to protect her from hardship. The village elder himself also tried to protect the girl, but the priest forced him to obey. It was enough for the scoundrel to hint that the settlement would disappear from the face of the earth if they dared to disobey the aristocrats. The mayor recalls with hatred the vile smile of the despicable clergyman, calling him a selfish animal to himself. But, alas, if the man had dared to rise up against the baron's son, he would have endangered the entire village and its inhabitants. Folding his hands, the mayor bitterly begs Cydia for forgiveness. His mourning is interrupted by a knock at the door. The mayor turns around nervously. He has no idea who could be visiting at such a late hour. The door opens slightly, and Cydia herself timidly peeks into the room. She asks if the mayor is home. He is shocked to see the girl alive, whom he had given up hope of ever seeing again. He jumps up and shakes Cydia by the shoulders, trying to understand if the albino girl has been hurt. The village head asks why she has returned and how she managed to escape. Looking closely at Cydia, the man sadly lowers his gaze. He now asks the girl for forgiveness aloud. The chief cannot hold back the tears that prevent him from finishing. Cydia gently interrupts him. She steps aside to show the man who saved her from trouble. The village head wipes his face. He knows that the village is full of problems, but the most important thing now is that Cydia is alive and well. The man begins to thank the person who helped the poor girl. Rosemary interrupts his stream of words. The mayor's eyes widen as he stares at the heroine. He falls to his knees and bangs his forehead on the floor, deciding that a goddess has appeared to him. Ms. Darksaint's companions freeze in confusion, but Rosemary calmly stops the old man, saying that she is just a passerby. He raises his head, and then he notices the main character's companions. He recognizes the bandits whom the Lord sent to kidnap Cydia. The mayor does not understand why they have come here. They exchange awkward glances. They try to convince the man that they have reformed. The former bandits add that Rosemary has won them over, that they have fallen in love with her beauty and strength, and now serve her. The mayor freezes, deciding that they are just some kind of fools. When a man was young, he served in the military. As soon as he laid eyes on the beautiful Rosemi, he immediately realized that the main character was an incredible warrior. However, the mayor still does not understand how one can submit to someone who almost killed you. He considers Lady Darksaint to be an outstanding woman. Noticing the admiring glances that the bandits cast at their mistress, the old man wonders if Rosemi really has such power over them. She smiles and says she is pleased to meet the chief. She introduces herself and adds that if her henchmen do anything wrong, her companions visibly tense up at these words. But their acquaintance is interrupted by someone's applause. A priest enters the room with a sweet expression on his face. He finds it a true miracle that Cydia, who was sacrificed, was able to survive and return home safe and sound. The elder and Rosemi glare at the newcomer. He continues, adding that surely the goddess herself helped the albino girl and those who worried about her fate. Turning to Mrs. Darksaint, the priest says he wants to know the name of this brave maiden. She introduces herself, and the villain greets her response with the same frozen smile. He is extremely dissatisfied that some girl has gotten involved in this story and ruined all his plans. Now no one will pity the priest, which greatly upsets him. Cydia politely greets the abbot, and he repeats how lucky everyone is that the girl is still alive. Mentally, he curses the lucky Cydia with his last words and decides that he will still have a chance to finish what he started. But then the albino girl suddenly bursts into bitter tears, lamenting how sorry she is. The priest looks at her in bewilderment. The former bandits join Cydia, noticing that they have a bad feeling that something terrible is about to happen. They suggest praying. The priest, covered in cold sweat, asks what is wrong. Rosemi and Cydia's subordinates kneel before the priest and immerse themselves in reading prayers, repeating over and over that they are very, very sorry. Frightened, the abbot nervously asks what they are doing. Earlier, before arriving in the village, Cydia called the men chosen for the trip to the settlement. The one-eyed bandit asks what she wanted from them. The albino girl admits that she was hoping to get some advice. Looking at Mrs. Darksaint, who is caressing the dragon, Cydia announces that they will soon leave for her native village of baddies. She asks uncertainly if Rosemi will definitely sentence the priest. The one-eyed man replies that it will definitely happen. Cydia still can't believe that the abbot turned out to be such a terrible person. She recalls that he sometimes treated her kindly, offering her sweets. Her interlocutor sympathetically calls out to Cydia. Smiling broadly, Cydia says that she has come up with something. She wants, of course, as a sign of gratitude, to pray for the repose of the clergyman's soul in advance. The one-eyed man is delighted with this decision, although he finds it more like revenge than an expression of gratitude. The priest grimaces as he watches Lady Darksaint's companions praying fervently. He loves it when everyone around him sympathizes with him, calling him unfortunate, poor thing. But this pity feels somehow wrong. The abbot interrupts his prayers irritably, asking why they are commemorating him, as if he were about to die. Here, he meets Rosemi's icy gaze. She asks if he really doesn't understand anything. The main character coldly remarks that for all the crimes he has committed, he deserves only death. Mrs. Darksaint asks if anything comes to mind. The clergyman stammers, trying to think of a way out of the situation. Lifting his head, he meets Rosemi's eyes, which are filled with deadly contempt. The abbot falls silent mid-sentence. The main character's gaze weighs heavily on him, as if she is piercing him through and through. The priest begins to feel that Lady Darksaint knows everything about his crimes. Distracted from Rosemi, the abbot realizes that the faces of the praying boys seem vaguely familiar to him. He remembers that it was his father who hired them to kidnap Cydia. The clergyman wonders why they have now joined Rosemi. He fears that the bandits have told Mrs. Darksaint everything. Large beads of sweat roll down his face. The priest decides that there is no point in pretending anymore. The abbot stretches his lips into a smile and bursts into a nasty giggle. He adds that he did indeed commit all these crimes. Driven mad, the clergyman shouts that he is a murderer and had a lot of blood on his hands. The abbot confesses that he sentenced 6 people, including his mother, before arriving in the village. He admits that he only cared for Cydia so that he could hear words of pity during the harvest. Rosemi steps forward and coldly declares that the priest has revealed his crimes. Frightened, the abbot asks who she is. He tries to threaten her, informing her that his father, Baron Andalm, rules these lands. The priest offers to ask him to take Lady Darksaint as a concubine. Rosemi grabs the abbot by the collar and lifts him off the ground. She replies that even if she were still the ugly woman she used to be, she would never accept such an offer from the father of a pervert like the priest, and she would never bear his child. Lady Darksaint raises her fist. The elder, Cydia, and the one-eyed man watch the scene with concern. The priest clenches his teeth, fearing the blow. He decides that he has nothing to lose now. The abbot pulls a small vial of some kind of potion from his pocket. It was given to him by a mysterious stranger who recognized the priest as the Baron's son and noticed that a little caution wouldn't hurt anyone. Under Rosemi's watchful gaze, the abbot drinks the elixir in one gulp. Giggling, he says that he didn't really want to drink this dubious potion. The priest's body grows larger, his clothes tear. Cydia and the former bandit look in horror at the changed abbot. He says that he can easily deal with some fragile girl. Lady Darksaint looks at him with a calm smile on her face. She realizes that the priest has used the medicine to empower himself. The main character remembers that Sheila was also subjugated with magic. She comes to the conclusion that some nasty magician is at work here. Trembling with rage, the abbot shouts that Rosemi has ruined all his plans. He screams, spitting saliva, that all the problems are because of the main character and rushes at the girl. She calmly listens to the priest, without even flinching. Her companions call out to her in fear. With one powerful movement, Lady Darksaint delivers a powerful blow to the enraged abbot. He howls in pain, and the witnesses to the fight freeze in shock. Rosemi calmly says that she recognizes the priest's courage. After all, he is now ugly both inside and out. She asks why he needed all this. Lady Darksaint knocks the abbot to the ground. A collective sigh of admiration ripples through the group of observers. The one-eyed man remarks that there is certainly no need to worry about Rosemi. The priest clenches his legs tightly, cursing the mage who gave him the useless elixir. He mentally calls the sorcerer a fraud. The abbot thinks that Lady Darksaint seems suspiciously strong. He asks the main character looming over him to wait. The priest promises that his father will pay the ransom for him. She asks again, irritated. The abbot, laughing hysterically, says that the Baron always covered up his crimes. He suggests they settle things peacefully, but Rosemi orders him to shut up. She remarks that the fact that the Baron is not ashamed to defend such a scoundrel says a lot about him. The main character adds that he is worse than all the despicable aristocrats she knows put together. Mrs. Darksaint squeezes the priest's fingers tightly. Stammering, he nervously asks what she is going to do. Instead of answering, Rosemi slowly breaks his bones one by one. The abbot screams desperately in pain, but the main character only coldly says that his victims had it even worse. Mrs. Darksaint's companions cover their mouths in horror. Rosemi leans close to the priest's contorted face. She reminds him that he has committed 2 inhuman crimes. He killed his mother and an innocent child. There is not a trace of pity in Rosemi's eyes. She coldly remarks that the death penalty for such crimes is the lightest punishment. Rumor has it that the abbot's last screams echoed throughout the village of baddies all night long and only stopped at dawn. A happy Cydia runs into the room. She is holding a dress in her hands. With a beaming smile, the albino girl offers Rosemi to try on the clothes. She looks thoughtfully at the new outfit. Mrs. Darksaint and her companions manage to put an end to all the rumors about the sacrifice. Having dealt with this, they decided to stay in the village of baddies for a while. Rosemi puts on the dress and twirls uncertainly in it. Cydia looks at her with admiration. She happily remarks that this style suits Mrs. Darksaint very well. The dress fits the main character perfectly. The albino girl carefully examines Rosemi from all sides. And once again, she is convinced that Ms. Darksaint has excellent looks. However, the main character is still sad. She remembers the old days when all her clothes were custom-made. Now Rosemi can wear standard sizes. Ms. Darksaint notes with displeasure that this dress is uncomfortable to move in. Cydia timidly reminds her that it is a skirt, so of course the main character will find it unusual. At that moment, the door opens. The headman enters the room. He apologizes for disturbing them. Cydia gasps in fright and quickly covers Rosemi. The latter, not the least bit embarrassed, plans to continue changing. The main character still thinks it would be better to continue wearing pants. The albino girl hastily apologizes to the headmaster and asks him to leave for a moment. He sheepishly rushes out the door. Cydia reproaches Ms. Darksaint, reminding her that she had already told her to stop undressing in front of everyone. Rosemi grunts and obediently promises to listen to her words. After a while, the village head makes another attempt to visit the main character. Greeting her again, he approaches Mrs. Darksaint, who is sitting on the sofa. The old man warmly thanks Rosemi for saving Cydia and ridding the village of the priest. The main character listens to the mayor with her arms crossed over her chest. She grimly hopes that the children killed by the abbot are now at least a little bit better off. Mrs. Darksaint is convinced that the mad priest should have been stopped by his father, the baron who owns these lands. However, He turned a blind eye to all his son's crimes, thus becoming a villain himself. Until that moment, Rosemi had intended to kill the dragon and die a heroic death. But instead, the main character met a repulsive villain and a girl whose life he had ruined. Lady Darksaint lowers her gaze. She mentally turns to God and vows to continue living. The main character now wants to use her power to rid the world of criminals and help the weak. Opening her eyes, Rosemi asks the village elder to tell her more about the local area. The old man explains that the Sandamian Empire lies north of the village. It is the most dangerous state on the continent, endlessly conquering more and more land. To the east is the kingdom of Liberia, and to the west is the kingdom of Rufenbia. This was the homeland of Lady Darksaint, and she served it faithfully. Prince Giskar also lived there. In the center of the lands lies the Federation of the Kingdoms of Galeria. The main character realizes that the village of Baddies itself lies at the center of all these territories. The village elder talks about the Federation of Kingdoms of Galeria. He notes that although the name sounds like it belongs to an impressive country, in reality, it is just a collection of incompetence. This state grew out of an alliance of minor kings who concluded a military treaty among themselves. This happened because the rulers were very frightened by the rapid growth of the Sandamian Empire. But despite their agreement, they have many differences. The differences in the views of the northern and southern peoples are too great. The kings of the northern countries directly border the Sandamian Empire, so in the event of an attack, they will be the first line of defense. But at the same time, the southerners declare at every opportunity that they will not give them any funds, soldiers, or resources. At the same time, they themselves do not hesitate to ask for financial support. However, as soon as they get what they want, they immediately turn their backs on their allies, considering them despicable. Rosemi sighs thoughtfully and decides that the turmoil between them is most likely being sown by agents of the Sandamian Empire who have infiltrated the Galeria Federation of Kingdoms. This country surpasses all others in military power, and it also outstrips all its opponents in strategy. Lady Darksaint recalls that Prince Giskar also fell victim to the Empire's cunning plan. Rosemi wonders if Sheila, that treacherous woman, is at work in other states. A sinister smile appears on the main character's face, and she twists her fingers, imagining how she will strangle the spy if she dares to approach Lady Darksaint. Meanwhile, the mayor continues. He reports that Lady Rosemi has been well known for a long time. She is even mentioned in the Western Song of Heroes. However, the main character there is called the same as the ugly female general from 11 Nights. The old man catches himself and hastens to assure Lady Darksaint that she is very beautiful. She is about to reply that everything is fine when she suddenly stops mid-sentence. Rosemi thinks about the Song of Heroes. She remembers that her last battle took place only a few days ago. How did people manage to compose a song about this event so quickly? And could the legend have reached such a remote place in such a short time? The main character abruptly asks one question. When? The elder asks again in confusion. Lady Darksaint jumps up from her seat and looms over the old man. She nervously asks when exactly the ugly General Rosemi rushed with her 10 knights against 8,000 soldiers. The elder thinks for a moment. Finally, he replies that it happened about a year ago. The main character looks at him in amazement. She realizes that time has jumped forward. Rosemi learns that in 1 year, the situation in her native kingdom has completely changed. As a result of that battle, Baramides was defeated and the rebels surrendered. However, sometime later, it became known to everyone that Prince Giskar, who had summoned Rosemi to the capital, was under the influence of a spy. This news completely and irrevocably undermined the trust of the 20,000 soldiers who had been loyal to General Darksaint. Nevertheless, they continued to serve the state faithfully. However, a few months ago, the kingdom surrendered to the demands of the Sandamian Empire. The main character sinks in a deep thought. The elder whispers to Cydia, asking what is wrong with Rosemi. She hesitates, not knowing how to respond. Lady Darksaint finds that although the fall of her homeland is shocking, it is still better than submitting to the enemy's power. She is more surprised that 2 of her soldiers managed to survive that insane battle. Although they're only a couple of knights, it is a real miracle that they managed to get through that monstrous battle. Although the main character is happy for them, she is suddenly struck by an uncomfortable thought. Rosemi will now have to keep her promise and allow the survivors to serve at her bedside. When she made her vow, the main character had no doubt that everyone would die, including herself. Lady Darksaint promised this only because she was sure that she would not have to fulfill it. But now it turns out that not only she, but also her 2 knights are still alive. This means she will have to keep her word. Rosemi herself always said that she does not make empty promises. She waves her hair indignantly. At that time, All the knights flatly refused this honor, but now that Lady Darksaint has become so beautiful, they may well change their minds. Cydia silently looks at Rosemary, who interrupts her thoughts. She asks the mayor what happened to the 2 surviving soldiers. He spreads his arms and replies. According to rumors, Prince Gizkar honored them as heroes and offered them to continue serving the royal family faithfully. However, the knights refused and became mercenaries. Now they wander through different states. Rosemary smiles sadly, thinking that if they had agreed, they would have been promoted. She cannot believe that only a couple of guys survived from her loyal squad. With these thoughts, the smile disappears from her face. Lady Darksaint apologizes to her companions and says she wants to be alone for a while. Cydia looks at her with concern, but she obediently leaves, calling the headman to follow her. The door closes behind them, and Rosemary sadly bows her head. Tears she has held back for so long flow from her eyes. Only now does she fully realize that there are only 3 survivors, including herself. All the others obeyed her order and perished. Lady Darksaint knows she should not feel sorry or apologize. She should be grateful. However, she is still upset that she was unable to share the fate of her soldiers and die with them. The main character clenches her fists and continues to cry. Then someone calls out to Cydia, calling her a victim. The albino girl pouts and asks them to stop calling her that. The one-eyed bandit scratches the back of his head and hastily apologizes. He adds that he has a couple of questions for Rosemary. The first concerns the former bandits who went to sell animal skins. Cydia happily interrupts him, reminding him that the animals were caught with the help of her magic and Sheila. She notes that they will get a decent amount of money for them. The albino girl is also pleased that they worked so well together. Her interlocutor awkwardly agrees and continues. Even though the appointed time has long passed, those guys never came back. Cydia instantly darkens, overcome by a bad feeling. She nervously asks what the second question is. He looks at the girl with a heavy heart. The one-eyed man reports that someone has surrounded the village. To be continued. Thanks for watching. Write your feedback in the comments. If you like the story, please like and subscribe. See you soon.